Welcome back again to what is still being referred to as the Tim Graham Show. For now, we are still undergoing our soft relaunch here with Matthew Fairburn and Jonah Bronstein. The Tim Graham Show brought to you by CTBK, Shampoo, Travis, Besaw, and Kirshner, joining us for this ride as we figure things out. Jonah Bronstein coming to us from the floor of his closet, apparently. But hey, we're all trying to find out things. I mean, I'm throwing stuff behind me so you don't see the construction going on behind Muhammad Ali and Gale Sayers. Fairburn's the only guy who looks like he has his stuff together.
Well, I try. I have to cover up for my other deficiencies.
Well, we have so much to talk about. And we're going to be joined later on in the show by Wyoming offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach Brent Vigen. He is the guy who coached Josh Allen at Wyoming, and he's going to talk to us about Josh Allen's hot start, also give us his thoughts on Carson Wentz, who he also coached at North Dakota State. We're going to get into the issues that have been facing college coaches also through this pandemic. The Mountain West Conference on Thursday night announcing that it's going to play an 8-game schedule starting on October 24th. So Brent Vigen's a happy man today as he has a team to coach. And but mostly, and for obvious reasons, we're going to talk to him about Josh Allen, what he sees in Josh Allen's development. And we're going to hear from Joel Staniszewski on the line from Vegas to give us his thoughts on the Bills from a betting standpoint. Interesting game this week. The Rams, a tough opponent. The Bills are favored by 2.5 points. Joel Staniszewski likes the money line for the Bills, and he will explain why there is some actual mathematical value, not just his hunch about being a Bills fan or anything like that. He says that the smart play is because there might be a little algorithm or analytical error that Vegas has made with this week's odds so far. So
sounds like we could have used Joel this time last week.
We probably should have gotten in touch with Joel before we went to Seneca Niagara and dumped some money. I have to confess. If you had read the Athletic story that Matthew Fairburn and I did from the Seneca Niagara Casino Sportsbook last Sunday, you would come away with the conclusion that I broke even roughly.
And that you were pretty savvy in doing so.
That I won on the first touchdown of the game. Well, it didn't matter that it was the first touchdown, but I had what was it, a $20 bet to pay 110 or whatever, that somebody other than XYZ was going to score for the Bills. It turned out that I lost that bet. I went to the counter and I was told it was a loser. I protested. I said, no, I'm even forgetting the guy's name, the fullback. I'm sorry. I'm having a
Reggie Gilliam.
Reggie Gilliam. Yeah. I said, wait, Reggie Gilliam scored a touchdown. Well, they did some research, and they came back with the pregame wagers. Reggie Gilliam was on the board as somebody who could score a touchdown. My bet was anybody other than those who were listed as that you could bet on. Reggie Gilliam was somebody you can bet on. In fact, it would have been voided eventually. But on the board before last week's game was whether or not Pat DeMarco was going to score a touchdown for the Bills. So if Pat DeMarco, who no longer is on the roster, then, yeah, Reggie Gilliam was on there. I didn't see it.
I think Isaiah Hodgins was on there. I think Isaiah Hodgins, who's on injured reserve, was also on there. So it was –
Isaiah Hodges' new child, his newborn baby, was available on.
Basically, it was a sucker's bet, and the way they listed the odds was to trap a sucker like you. And
I was a sucker and a loser.
Yeah, but to be fair, it was after we filed, and when we filed, we thought you were a winner. We thought you had broken even.
Ethics,
that was the world we existed in, was that
right.
You were a winner, and I thought you might even be able to talk yourself into being a winner that maybe, but they don't really operate that way. If
They
what
do
they
not.
scan is, there's no negotiation. If what they scan says you're not a winner, then you are a loser.
It's like arguing with the bank. I mean, yeah, you think of a casino and the frivolity and the booze and the smoking and the guy and the backslapping and, you know, coming from my days in Vegas, you know, the hookers walking around and everybody, you know, it's like just, you know, debauchery all over the place. Everybody, you know, rules are out the window. Make it up as you go. Everybody's having a good time. But when it comes down to the actual money aspect of it, the casino, yeah, you may as well be dealing with the U.S. Treasury.
So I
So
think
they down to the penny. I was going to
that's
say down to the nickel. By the way, a weird thing happened when I did cash out. I got change. I was paid off in nickels, which I didn't like.
How many nickels?
It was like
probably 10, right? 50
9
cents.
nickels. No, I think it was like something in 45 cents, and it was all nickels. I mean, no quarters.
Well, this is the problem with legal sports gambling. If you had a bookie, there's no way he would have remembered to put Reggie Gilliam on his prop bet odds.
Right.
And you can probably negotiate with a bookie.
They're
There's
too
no
thorough.
negotiating with the casino.
And the nickels also. If we had mobile sports betting, I wouldn't have to worry about nickels at all.
That's true.
Jonah Bronstein, we haven't heard much from you, other than for us to point out that you have a lot of shirts hanging on hangers behind you.
Would you like me to change my shirt? Because I could do that.
No, I think that's fine. Are you waiting tables tonight, or?
I'm caddying later.
So Jonah, we haven't seen much of you lately. I got to spend all day with Matt on Sunday. We miss you. We miss your face. Well, how about this? Let's talk about college sports. This is in your wheelhouse, right along with the Mountain West Conference coming back last night. The Mid-America Conference is still lurking out there, hasn't announced anything. What are your thoughts on UB playing some football games this year?
Well, it's expected that the MAC, the Mid-American Conference, will make an announcement today. That's what's been reported. It could happen maybe right now while we're recording, or even possibly before this recording gets out to our widespread audience. But sometime today, tonight, I would think the MAC will announce a plan to return playing, probably similar to what we've seen, the recent announcements from the Pac-12 and the Mountain West, playing a 6 or 7 game schedule starting sometime after Halloween, that first week in November. Because at this point, the Mid-American Conference is the only FBS league not planning to play, or that hasn't announced a plan to play this fall. They were the first FBS league to postpone their season to the spring, and at the time, it seemed like there was financial incentive along with the health and safety situation that possibly they would have fans in the stands in the spring, that possibly there'd be more primetime action games on ESPN. A spring football league might be a better television product to sell, and that there'd be a better season, potential for a better season in the spring. The dynamics of that haven't really changed financially, but if you're the Mid-American Conference, the schools in the Mid-American Conference, if you don't play this fall, you basically look like you're an FCS program playing in the spring with all the other FCS programs. And the players and some of the coaches were very outspoken after that Big Ten announcement last week that they want to play, they don't want to be left out. And I think there's fear that the damage to their perception of the league would be worse than the financial burden of trying to play this shortened schedule now in the fall.
And it really does, Mid-America Conference is almost like the little brother to the Big Ten because of the geography, really. It's where the schools overlap, and the kids who aren't quite good enough to get into a Big Ten school generally, I think, end up in the Mid-American Conference. And the Mid-America Conference also likes to think that they would steal the occasional recruit from a Big Ten school because they're recruiting from the same states and regions. So, yeah, I can understand the Mid-American Conference really being tied to what the Big Ten's going to do and looking shabby by comparison based on what the Big Ten's going to do, as opposed to, say, what the Pac-12 or the SEC. I mean, I think the Mid-American Conference can kind of get away with putting blinders on with that. But when the Big Ten right there in your own backyard does it, then the Mid-American Conference has to also.
But the big difference being the financials. There's a a high cost. I don't know exactly how much it costs, and it's kind of changing over time, but to do regular daily or even semi-daily COVID-19 testing is expensive right now, and it probably is going to get less expensive as time goes on. I think that was part of the initial calculation. So the Big Ten has a lot of money and has been able to get the machines and the technology to do daily antigen testing, and it's unclear whether the Mid-American Conference will be able to do that, to acquire the test, when they can acquire the test, and how expensive that's going to be, and if they can afford it.
What do you think that these developments, Jonah, have? What kind of impact do they have on basketball, do you think? I think everybody knew that basketball was going to be played. There was an optimism there that things would be a little bit more under control from the pandemic standpoint, crowds, arena security, campus safety, the whole thing. But now that football is reversing course, I think it adds to the optimism that we're going to have a pretty smooth basketball season, that this will help college administrators, athletic departments put together a type of season for basketball in which we don't have to worry about stopping and starting or delays or any kind of, and this is granted that football doesn't experience some kind of disaster, which is when you're talking about college kids, who knows?
Football, I wouldn't call it a disaster, but college football is not going as smooth as the NFL. There's games being postponed almost on a daily basis.
Right.
There's outbreaks at least in almost every conference that's trying to play right now. They haven't gotten this under control yet. There's a belief that the Big Ten and the Pac-12 and these schools that are starting next month will have better luck because they're doing the daily testing as opposed to weekly or 3 times a week. As you mentioned with basketball, I think to the point that you made, perception-wise, football starting and not facing a disaster, not being canceled outright, will help the perception for basketball and the belief that basketball can be played. But I think there's a major difference with basketball in that the NCAA can kind of control the situation from the top down, and they have. They've set a start date where every Division I program is going to start practicing, and every Division I program can start playing November 25th. And if you remember with football, the NCAA did not have the power to do that. And I think if the NCAA had their choice, they probably would have moved football to the spring as they did with FCS and Division II and Division III football. Junior college football is being played in the spring. And with basketball, they're able to set the calendar for everybody, and there really isn't a pushback from the big money football conferences and programs saying, no, we're going to do what's best for our institution and our league, not what's best for the country and the student athletes and everybody in the sport itself.
Yeah, so a lot going on here when you want to factor in the Mid-America Conference this fall, and football probably coming back at the University of Buffalo. We're obviously going to talk about the Bills and their game Sunday against the LA Rams, a much better opponent. Although the Dolphins showed a little something. Maybe the Dolphins aren't a joke, but we could talk about that too. Sabres really nothing to talk about there. But how about the Buffalo Blue Jays? There are some people around town that seem to be really excited about this, that Buffalo has a playoff baseball team. Look, I thought it was interesting for maybe a game or two. The first time it was on TV, I wanted to see what Salem Field looked like with these new lights that were made for broadcasting purposes. So when it would appear on national TV, yeah, I'll check that out. Let's see what the ads are. Let's see how they have it tarped off with the different seats and where they're putting the bullpens, and just curiosity. But my interest in the Buffalo Blue Jays, any more so than the Colorado Rockies or the St. Louis Cardinals, really evaporated pretty quickly. Where are you? Any thoughts, you guys? Do you care about the Buffalo Blue Jays?
Watched only really a handful of games, and it's usually when they play against the Yankees because they're on TV. Not that I watch every Yankees game, but it's more so a curiosity of the Blue Jays are at home, they're on TV, they're up against the Yankees. Other than that, sometimes I have a hard time figuring out where the game is even. It's like, oh, the Blue Jays are playing the Yankees, so they'll be on local TV. And I'm looking at the stadiums, and they're not really showing tons of shots and things like that. And you're just watching the game, and sometimes it's hard to figure it out. But I think the only interesting aspect of this for me is what happens if we get to a point where the Bills allow fans in the stands. Now, what is happening with baseball? Are they going to try a bubble of sorts for the playoffs, or are they going to continue playing at home stadiums?
Neutral
Because
sites, right? I don't know exactly their plan, but playoff games are going to be played on neutral fields.
so they won't even have the option of putting fans in Salem Field. To me, that was
No,
always,
I think pretty soon, I think they're gone. The Blue Jays will be gone.
and that was like the missing ingredient for me for this to like take hold as something that would capture the hearts of Buffalo sports fans. If they could have gone to these games, you'd probably have a lot of new Blue Jays fans. You probably still have some, but I think to your point, Tim, after the first game or two, I think it really lost its luster. It's not as if they were following, people are following their hometown team. If you're a Yankees fan, you didn't become a Blue Jays fan because they played games in Buffalo. If you're a Red Sox fan, same thing. If you were a nomad and a wandering person with no baseball team, maybe you jumped on. But without the in-person experience, I think the emotional attachment is minimal for some people.
Yeah, I've just found it interesting the way that the media has really, and I get it. It was something to do, especially in the summer when we were dying for some sort of sports to cover. Training camps were, everything was at arm's length. You weren't allowed to, attend the games or attend practices at St. John Fisher like we normally did, and the whole thing. So we needed something to cover. And the fact that the Blue Jays were playing games in Buffalo was a novelty for me. But I think that there was, television also. I'm not just talking about the Buffalo News, but the television also was like, hey, this is going on. You guys need to know about this. And we're going to keep reminding you, hey, the Blue Jays won tonight. And I don't know. To me, it was a waste of precious airtime, especially if you're a sports director in today's TV world, when you get 3 minutes. And I think I'm being generous with that amount of time. If you get this finite amount to get to talk about local sports, and to waste any of it on the Blue Jays, to me I thought it was strange. To me, I don't know. I've always even thought that covering the Bisons would be tantamount to having a beat writer covering Darien Lake. It's something to do. I mean, you don't really follow the player. Yeah, you might follow the players. There are some diehards who follow the players. But
there could be the occasional interesting feature story.
Yeah, the concept of a minor league team is to not win or lose games, and to cover it as, so-and-so pitched this many innings. Okay, I get it. And then the bullpen got the job done, and they came away with the win, or they blew it. Sometimes the minor league team they're throwing a guy out there because he has to be in that situation. And he's maybe training. He's recovering from an injury. I mean, there's all kinds of weird things. So you go out to the baseball game as an event, just like you'd go to Darien Lake, just like you'd go to Art Park. And I just always thought it was strange to have somebody, would the Buffalo News send somebody out to Darien Lake to say, yeah, the tilt-a-whirl just wasn't working today. It didn't. It was broken down a couple of times. There was a gear issue. People really, you really got to let the fans get their money's worth, because the tilt-a-whirl. I mean, the Viking ship kept swaying. I mean, that was great. Viking ship was great.
Well, they do send stuff out there for the to get the smiles, right?
Right. I don't know that they do that anymore. I think the format of the new
Nobody's smiling.
They don't do. No, nobody's smiling.
That's 2020. Nobody's.
All right. I don't want to go on that rant, but I just, it's strange, and it's a strange thing too, and it's only going to be here once, and
yeah, it'll be one of those weird things we look back on and be like, man, that was the amount of things that needed to happen for the Blue Jays to end up playing their games in Buffalo. There were a lot of things.
5 different places had to not want them.
Right. And Canada had to say no. The pandemic itself, all these things that
Pennsylvania said no. Maryland said no.
The MLB almost didn't play. They almost didn't make it through the first couple of weeks of the season. So there was certainly an odd element to it even happening to begin with. But once it happened, it was like, all right, what is this like? Well, it's a baseball game. That's not on TV, mind you. Most of them, unless they're playing against, it's not a local market. So it was an odd little couple month stretch, but hey, they're in the playoffs.
Yeah. Our Buffalo Blue Jays are in the playoffs. So this Bills game on Sunday in Orchard Park against the Los Angeles Rams, a team that was in the Super Bowl just 2 seasons ago. Obviously a step up in competition from the New York Jets and probably from the Miami Dolphins, but the Bills have some things going in their favor. They get a couple of linebackers back. It looks like at least Matt Milano. Matt, I don't know if you have any update on Tremaine Edmonds. I think he was in the red practice or the red no contact jersey again on Friday. And the fact that the LA Rams are making back-to-back East Coast trips. I mean, that is not easy to do. They did not decide to stay out into the Eastern time zone. They went back to Southern California. So what are your guys' thoughts on this matchup on Sunday?
It's the point about them traveling is, I think, a big one. It's one of the reasons why I think the Bills have a bit of an edge heading into this game. The Rams wanted to stay out east for both of these games. It's part of why they, I think, had the schedule set up the way that it did. Usually you have to request that from the league, and then something COVID related prevented them. They probably couldn't find a place or whatever to practice, and so they had to go back and forth. The fact that they're planning for one thing and now have to do another, this is a good team, not a perfect team, that the Rams, that is. So I think Milano and Edmonds play a pretty big role here. Both of them are questionable heading into the game. The injury report came out a few minutes ago. The Bills got destroyed by Miami's tight end, Mike Gesicki, last week. Tyler Higbee had 3 touchdowns for the Rams last week at tight end. They used a ton of play action.
On only 5 catches.
This is a team that is going to use play action, hit the middle of the field. They've got Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. They're going to use a ton of misdirection. All of those things scream that you need your 2 linebackers that play matchups against some of these guys and who have the discipline to hang with, guys. And I think the fact that they've played together a long time, you just saw some of that against the Dolphins, that there was something missing. And provided they're both back, I think the Bills have a pretty good chance on Sunday.
Do you have any thoughts on the point spread, the money line, we'll see how you if you're in agreement with Joel Staniszewski later. So you don't know what Joel Staniszewski thinks right now. So give me your wagers here. We'll see who's smart.
I would say my guess would be that Joel is referring to the fact that it's in some places it's a 1.5 spread, and in some it's a 2.5. And I don't know exactly what the money line is, but I think if you're going to be betting on the Bills to cover that spread, then, they're not going to win by – it's going to be really rare that they win by 1 point. I think they win the game by 4 points, maybe. Somewhere less than a touchdown, but more than a field goal, put it that way. 24-20, something like that. I think they can slow that offense down enough. It's an interesting predicament for the offense. Josh Allen, he avoids sacks really well. Aaron Donald doesn't let guys out of his grasp all that easily. He's had some interception luck, Josh Allen has, and Jalen Ramsey's pretty good when his hands are on the football. So if he can avoid some negative plays, do just enough, I think the Bills win, but not too comfortably.
Jonah, you want to be a degenerate with us?
Well, this is the type of game, I think, under normal circumstances, where I would like the Bills' chances playing at home early in the season against a West Coast team, making that trip. It seems like they've done that a lot of times, even when they weren't as good, when the Bills weren't as good as they are this year against teams that were very good and stolen a game in September. What I would wonder, and maybe I'll ask Matt this, you were at the first home game. Do the Bills get that same energy boost from playing at home without the crowd there? And does that change, does that change the dynamic for both teams? Does it make it a little bit easier for the Rams to make that trip and play on the East Coast? Does it make it a little bit harder for the Bills to get up for this game without the fans in the stands?
I think it definitely makes life easier on Jared Goff. That's a guy that I could see in a hostile environment like the Bills fans can create. It's a tough deal for a quarterback, any quarterback, and certainly Jared Goff, who relies a lot on the communication with his coach, and the changing the plays sometimes when they get up to the line of scrimmage. That element is gone, to your point. I think that's a really good point. I think some of the home field advantage shows up in other ways. It's like Tim mentioned, a team making a second straight trip to the East Coast. In this sort of, coronavirus NFL, the hoops you have to jump through to travel. And it's not as comfortable maybe as it once was, where you can't leave the hotel room. There's some anxiety involved in traveling, I think, for some people. Many of us haven't even traveled, right, since this whole thing started. And then there's the stadium too, the wind, and just being comfortable where you are. The Bills have played here before. So I don't know. I think the home field advantage isn't what it was. I don't know how much that's impacting point spreads or not, but I do think it helps the communication of the Rams offense, which is such a big part of what they do. And certainly the Bills have the energy factor is only one part of the home field advantage. I think the other part is messing up what the offense has going, and they're not going to have that from their fans. And I think that's going to make life a little bit easier for Jared Goff and Sean McVay.
And here's a potentially overlooked aspect of no crowd or low crowd noise because it can only reach the 70 decibels. And I'll ask Joel Staniszewski about it. We saw it at the end of the game on Sunday in Miami. Garbage time touchdowns. You don't have a crowd there, whether the quarterback can operate pretty much uninhibited from a noise standpoint, whether you're the home team or the road team. So maybe that helps on the backdoor covers a lot more because the defense is in prevent, and yes, they would like you to not score. They're not just giving you the end zone, but when you're in prevent and with no crowd, you should be able to pick a defense apart, move down the field. And so you could get it helps eliminate a lot of confusion at stressful times.
And as much as gets made over the Bills having an advantage in cold weather at home, I think you see more examples over the years of early season September games when the crowd is just really juiced up. They've probably been there since Thursday, that you see the 12th man, if you will, have its effect on the game when the weather's warm a little more than when it's cold, and maybe it's harder to bring that same energy.
Yeah, I think the Bills miss more than most teams by not having their fans in the stadium. And this is the last home game before Thursday Night Football against the Chiefs. They go on the road next week to play the Raiders. Then they're on the road against the Titans. And then they have that Thursday night game at home against the defending Super Bowl champs, one that I'm sure everybody had circled on their schedule as a game where they were going to be there since the previous Thursday, getting tuned up and ready to go for a primetime game against the Chiefs. There's a outside chance, I guess, that fans could be there. They haven't totally eliminated that possibility yet, but if they're not there, or even in a small number, it's a totally different atmosphere, to Jonah's point.
One thing I did want to ask you guys, were you aware that Shampoo, Travis, Besaw, and Kirshner is a leading accounting firm with a growing team of accountants and business consultants?
Tell me more.
With roots in Amherst, CTBK pairs every project with a focus on a human connection between its team and the client. For assurance, accounting, taxes, litigation support, advice on acquisitions and mergers, Jonah, and now access to CFO-level resolutions from CFO Solutions Plus. CTBK is available and ready to solve any issue your business faces. For a consultation or to request a quote, call 716-630-2400. Once more, that's 716-630-2400. Shampo, Travis, Besaw, and Kirshner, over a quarter century of proven accounting and business excellence for Western New York and beyond. Big thanks to CTBK for joining us on this journey and its continued support of what is still, for now, being called the Tim Graham Show.
Do you know where I might be able to follow them on Twitter? Would it be CTBK45?
Yeah, at CTBK45. You can follow them on Twitter. And yeah, that's really all you need. You got the phone number, call them up, ask for Gene, tell them Tim sent you.
Who's your favorite number 45, Tim?
My favorite number 45.
The 45th president?
Sure. 45. 45 is not a number that just jumps out at me. Wasn't that Michael Jordan's number?
Yeah, that's briefly. I was trying to think. I couldn't even think of a 45. There is that, which most people don't. They would say that's a lesser version of Michael Jordan, so they wouldn't be big fans of 45.
Well, Joe Licata would say immediately Michael Jordan is his favorite 45. But what we're going to do right now, we're going to bring in Wyoming offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, and associate head coach Brent Vigen. He's going to talk to us about Josh Allen. And maybe, Jonah, during this break, you can go see if you can find all the great 45s.
Sure.
Not the records, but actual 45s. And
I've got one
at
in
the
my
end of the
holster.
show, we'll vote on the greatest 45 of all time.
I think I'll go change my shirt and I might pop back into that interview a little late.
All right. Yeah, jump in there. Even if it's just for a few seconds.
Yeah, whatever you need.
All right. Joining us now all the way from Laramie, Wyoming is Brent Vigen. He's the offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, and associate head coach for the Wyoming Cowboys. Brent, thanks for joining us.
Oh, great to be on with you.
Brent, tell us, or at least my curiosity, other than a pay grade situation, what does the associate head coach do? You don't really. This isn't baseball. Craig Bowl is not going to get ejected. So what's the role of the associate head coach?
Well, an occasional time when coach might leave to go recruiting or something like that, you maybe break the team down. No, I don't know. I think there to be an advisor to him. You know, what's become apparent, maybe more so than ever, to have at least the order of who would be the next in charge, I think is probably more appropriate in these times than it's ever been before. So hopefully we don't have to cross that road, but I think it's just a fancy title more than anything.
Do you think then that there would be a peaceful transferal of power if that were to come to be?
Peaceful. I wouldn't be a good situation. We need coach here, but we've worked together long enough that I think I have a good sense for what he'd be looking for, all that type of thing.
Well, of course, we're going to be talking to Brent Vigen about Josh Allen and his hot start. He coached Josh Allen at Wyoming, but some congratulations are in order. Late Thursday night, especially East Coast time, the Mountain West Conference announced that its 12 teams are going to play an 8-game conference schedule, the third FBS conference to reverse course and say after canceling its season or postponing until the spring, I guess, that they will play in the fall. So starting October 24th, you got a month here, Coach, to get going. First off, congratulations that you're going to play games, but what's this been like for you in trying to keep the guys ready and now you got to prepare for some games?
Well, it's been a real mix of emotions. Going back to August 10th when we were shut down. We were in a really good place here at the University of Wyoming here in Laramie. Our guys have worked really hard, really for 2 months leading up. And unfortunately, our conference wasn't maybe as a whole wasn't in that same position. So navigating that that next month was real challenging. We made a decision to start bringing our guys back, even with school being online at the beginning of September. But that was more in the minds that we were going to play spring, winter, something along those lines. And then all of a sudden, really last Tuesday, things started moving where we were maybe going to be more in line with the Big Ten's timeline. And lo and behold, that's where we're at. So we've had the last week and a half to kind of set our sights on, okay, if things go on October 24th, let's accelerate everything as much as we can. And that starts with a full-fledged practice tomorrow. And, our guys are hungry, ready to go. And it'll be great for all of us to get back to some normalcy as far as just football on the field.
Well, for our purposes anyway, it's been a benefit that you have had some extra time to watch some film, because Josh Allen is off to, you can't even just call it a hot start. It is a historic start from NFL standpoint. And I broke down a lot of the numbers this week. It's not just from a start. Any two back-to-back games of regular season, whatever, or even carry over from a season finale into a season opener, any two-game stretch, incredible rareness for what he's been able to accomplish. 729 passing yards, leads the NFL, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, very impressive. 70.4% completion percentage. And then you want to throw in that he's also rushed for 75 yards and a touchdown. Very few quarterbacks have done this in NFL history. It's only happened, this is the 19th time. And then there are some quarterbacks that did it multiple times. So very few have pulled this off. Brent, what have you seen from Josh Allen, and especially with the context that you have of his growth and having seen him come in from Reedley Community College? Well, maybe I'm loading up the question too much. Let's just enjoy these 2 weeks. What have you seen so far from Josh?
Well, what I see is Josh hasn't been satisfied with being a top 10 pick, with becoming a starter as a rookie. And it's no different than when he got here. He's had something to prove for a long, long time, going back to being an unrecruited kid out of Firebaugh, California. He chose to go to Reedley. He chose the path with more resistance, to be quite honest. He believed in himself. And same thing when he came here. This, maybe wasn't the ideal choice when he set his sights on finding a Division I program, but it really aligned well. And I think the same thing ended up happening for him in Buffalo, and him kind of finding that common ground in the pre-draft process, and Buffalo moving up to take him. I think he found a place that really fit him. And, getting a chance to be in contact with him a little bit this summer, he got on a couple of Zooms with our quarterbacks and even our whole freshman class. You can just see a continuing maturity, a continual growth, a determination to fix the flaws, to keep getting better. And watching him these first couple of weeks, I think it's just maturity. It's knowing that he doesn't have to make every play, while he still tries to at times, but just knowing when to check down, knowing when to slide, even though he hasn't slid every time. You can
Once.
Yeah, it was. He needs to work on that, but it was a true slide.
It was.
Yeah. So I just think getting better, being there for his team, doing everything he can to give his team a chance to win is what he's about. And you got to keep growing to do that. And I think that's where he's, where his work is shining right now. And that determination is really showing through in these first couple games.
Brent, I think you know this as well as anybody, he's sort of a polarizing guy in terms of how people talk about him publicly. And certainly that lead up to the draft, he had a ton of eyes on him, and you guys had a ton of eyes on your games because of him. And there's criticism that comes with that. There's overanalyzing that comes with that. It followed him into the NFL, but he seems to compartmentalize and deal with it and find the right motivation from it, but not let it consume him. What do you notice about the way he's dealt with that aspect of being this polarizing guy, this guy that has to deal with criticism from all angles, and
seems to plow through it just fine.
Well, I know going back to his 2 seasons he played for us, 16 was this meteoric rise. We as a program and he as an individual in some ways came out of nowhere and had some real moments of success that Wyoming hadn't had in some time, beat a couple ranked teams and won our division and all that. It was in large part because of the way he played. And then all of a sudden the question about him entering that 17 draft posed itself. And, he chose to come back for, I think, a lot of the right reasons. But then that 17 year, while all those eyes were on him, I think that year really, set him up for success dealing with criticism, if that's even a phrase you can use, because it didn't go as planned necessarily that year. There was some bumps in the road, and you kind of saw it happen there where he was, okay, I got all these eyes on me. It isn't just the local media scene. It's eyes from all over the country. And it happened the summer leading into that season, and ultimately as our games went on that year. And he came through that really well. And I think, he's at its core, he's got great character, comes from a great family, and believes in himself. And I think when you believe in yourself more than anything else, that outside noise is just that. You hear it. I'm certain he hears it, but he doesn't let it bring him down. He's going to go out there the next game and prove everybody wrong, just like he has tried to, I'm sure, going back to when he was in high school, even maybe before that. So he's not unique in that regard, but I think to be successful at the NFL level, at quarterback, you need to have thick skin. You need to have that belief in yourself. And I do think that's what he really possesses.
We're in conversation with Brent Vigen, the offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, and associate head coach at Wyoming, the alma mater of Josh Allen. And Brent, I went out to Firebaugh. I did a series of stories from Firebaugh with his family, the people close to the football program, who saw him from Pop Warner, his Pop Warner coaches, in fact. I interviewed them. And one of the themes that comes up is that he always dreamed of being an NFL quarterback. Well, la-di-da, so did I. Every kid at some point has dreams of being the staff ace of their favorite baseball team, or an NFL quarterback, or the starting goalie for the Montreal Canadiens. When he arrived at Wyoming from Reedley, it still, I think, mathematically was a long shot. Or if you took a look at, the chances of this happening. I mean, how many NFL quarterbacks has Wyoming produced? I think none, maybe a couple. I know that there were some days during the WAC when there was prolific passing numbers, but that didn't necessarily translate to the NFL. So I guess, when, Brent, did you recognize in him that this guy's dream could be reality? And I guess maybe when did he think that too? Because I think he says that he always knew it, but that's also, he's still a teenager when he comes to you.
Right. He came to us in the spring semester, and he certainly flashed his ability to flash. You knew that talent-wise, he had been blessed, and that was starting to all take shape with his physical growth. But he had a long ways to go in so many different ways. And then he played, I think it was 13 plays, our second game of the 15 season, and broke his collarbone. But there was a flash there. I think that he said, okay, there's something here. And but that injury was a setback, but it also allowed him to take a step back and really say, okay, to be what I want to be. That's what he was thinking. I certainly was hoping he would just become a productive starter the next year. But for us, he had to go about his physical training in a different way. And he did that through that time. He soaked things up a little bit differently than he had. And then where it started maybe to click for us as a coaching staff was that next season, and it wasn't immediately. He did some great things early, but you start putting this body of work together over maybe 7, 8, 9 games, and we were, I think, 7-2 after 9 games, and certainly he wasn't our only guy. We got a whole host of guys off that team that are playing across the NFL, but I think beyond his physical ability, what was apparent was that the competitive fire was there in a really hard to measure level, and he'd worked so hard, and I think he gained that respect of his teammates. He was elected a captain. So all those intangible things were coming to the front along with, his tangible qualities, his talents. So the whole going out early after his third year wasn't something that really occurred to me. And then we play our bowl game, and all of a sudden I got a text from Carson Wentz that said, "Is your guy good enough to leave right now?" or something along those lines, because Carson's people wanted to get him, Josh, in their fold. So it hit us, smack in the face right there in December of 16. And like I said before, ultimately he chose to come back. But that whole fall, it was an incredible rise for a guy in our league who was playing, playing a full season for the first time. This wasn't maybe even a Derek Carr that had played several years and, at Fresno, or, a lot of these guys at smaller schools. It takes a while, but he was 1 year into it, and he had done enough that fall for people to take notice. And, he's a unique, some of his qualities, while aren't specifically unique, I think the collection of his intangibles with his talent puts him on a pretty small scale.
And it should be mentioned, Brent Vigen coached Carson Wentz at North Dakota State, which is why that connection gets made. And let me ask you this. I know Matt's got more questions, but since you just mentioned Carson Wentz, that comparison gets made a lot. Josh Allen, Carson Wentz, and I think partially size. You look at the fact that you coached both of them. You get asked about these guys a lot. And I'm willing to sacrifice my own credentials here. Is that a lazy comparison just because you happen to coach them both, and you, as a polite representative of Wyoming, answer the questions nicely and will try to put something together for the journalist? Are they legitimate, or should they not be compared at all?
Well, I think the comparison in this day and age, when quarterbacks come from nowhere, essentially, right? North Dakota State, Wyoming, I think they're immediately going to get dumped in the same bucket as opposed to guys that are coming from more acclaimed programs. So I think that's fair. I do think the physical characteristics are very similar. I know in knowing both of them, they're different. They process things different, but they're both, incredibly competitive. They're not going to let anybody tell them they can't do something, and I think their intangibles from a competitiveness, from their foundation, character, and all those things are very similar, but they process things different. And, I think they were both fortunate to land in situations where early on they handed the keys and be given support in a pretty quick fashion, and obviously things are a little bumpy for Carson right now, but I trust that he'll come out of it. It's his way, I guess. So yeah, maybe a little bit lazy, I suppose, but there's definitely similarities beyond just the fact that, Coach Bowl and I are associated with him.
When you think about these first 2 games, like you said, kind of a unique chance to watch your guys in the league. Usually you're busy game planning or breaking down tape from your game the day before and don't get to sink your teeth into NFL tape. What have you seen? I mean, like Tim mentioned, this is an unusual 2-game run from Josh in terms of jumps from when you had him, or maybe even jumps from, clips of his rookie season and second year that you've seen. Mechanically, how he's commanding the offense. What type of things have you seen from him that way where he's made improvements, maybe the biggest areas of improvement for him?
Well, the 70% plus completion, I think, is reflective of making all those check down throws that he should. He hasn't, I don't think he's missed many of those, if any. I think he's missed some hard throws, in particular, maybe going to his left. But he hasn't missed the ones. I know in college, you go through a course of the season, both those years, and there was a handful of, that thing, maybe that's 2-3% from a completion percentage that you just miss a throw. And I think what I see mechanically, there's just a real calmness to him, and that's a lot of things. That's I'm certain he feels comfortable with what he's seeing and processing all of that. That's such in a different place than it's been his first 2 years. So he's surveying the field differently. He's not escaping the pocket maybe as radically as he maybe would have as a younger quarterback. There's been several times in these first 2 games where it seems like he's had all day back there, and that's a credit to, certainly him trusting his O-line, but his O-line, blocking their tails off, I guess. And he still made some really spectacular plays where you say, like, maybe it's the addition of a few receivers last year, certainly the addition of Diggs this year, where he's trusting his guys too, and they're making some plays. That's all part of success in the passing game. It's having guys on the other end that can make plays, and it seems like they've done a good job in Buffalo of really growing that receiving core over the last couple of years. And as a passing unit, I guess they look much more complete certainly than they did when he was out there as a rookie.
We're in conversation with Brent Vigen. He's the offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, and associate head coach at Wyoming. Brent, I'm not really sure how to phrase this question. So if you can maybe meander with me as I try to pull it out here. But, from a philosophical standpoint, how do you, especially as somebody who knows Josh Allen and his fieriness, his propensity for hero ball, because at some point in his life he's made that play and he thinks he can do it again, and maybe he can, but sometimes he gets reminded and smacked back down to reality. We haven't really seen too much of that through these first 2 games, and yet you have a quarterback who's on a nice run and he's feeling it. What is that sweet spot between letting, maybe not just a quarterback, as an offensive coordinator, a guy who played tight end himself, any athlete, what's that sweet spot of go do it? You're feeling this, you're on this run, versus keep your cleats on the ground here and don't do anything stupid. Let's play within yourself. But yet sometimes these guys just get into this otherworldly place and you want to experience it, whether you're a fan and probably even if you're a coach.
Yeah, that's a real difficult question to have this simple answer. I think you want your athletes to push those limits the best they can, understand where that line is. And I think, in Josh's 2 years with us, there was a lot of breaking down his first year so that his second year, some of those mistakes didn't occur. Understanding when that scoreboard, you might be down 21, there's not a 21-point play out there. Taking what the defense gives you. You could go on and on with the cliches. I did hear Josh say, relative to that 1 3rd and 8 run where he jumped over the guy, ran over the guy, he understands he can't do that all the time. So that in itself is something for him to say that. He was trying to get a first down there, and in those picking and choosing your battles is maybe what I think he's learning. I think his 2 carries in that game were that run where he jumped over a guy, ran over a guy. Ultimately, the ball didn't, whatever happened. And then he had the one long run where he slid. And so, I think he's learning, and that's what that's that continued maturity that you see is he's one of 11 now. Certainly to say he's the most important one of the 11, but he's got guys that he can lean on that offensive unit, and that's something that when you're referring to an individual pushing those limits, I think that's what you got to understand is you still need to rely on the rest of the guys out here. You can't be the guy trying to make every play, and that's development of a roster. That's development of him just individually. I think understanding. He talked a lot about to our quarterbacks this summer about down and distance and understanding that principle, understanding field position, when and where to take your chances. So he went through this whole thing with our quarterbacks, and you could tell he's just processing everything differently, way more ahead of his thoughts than he would. I'm sure he looks over and sees that down and distance, and he's calculating his risks a little bit differently than he would have maybe just going out and they're playing as a rookie. So, I don't know if that answers your question necessarily. It's complicated, but I think it's a limit. I'm sure they want him to push, but know where those boundaries are. And I think he understands those boundaries much more now than he maybe did a couple years ago.
What have you noticed about, and maybe it hasn't changed or maybe it has, but you were at North Dakota State for a long time, and you see in the last few years, there's Carson Wentz, there's Josh Allen, now there's Trey Lance. These guys from smaller programs that seem to be on the radar sooner and in the spotlight sooner. Obviously, it's always been a case of you find football players where you find football players. But what do you think Carson Wentz and Josh Allen have done to maybe change the minds of the athlete when they're picking a school and saying, hey, I can go to Wyoming and get the same coaching Josh Allen and Carson Wentz got, or I can go to North Dakota State, and if I'm good enough, they'll find me. Do you think there's been a shift at all in how maybe the recruits are thinking about their futures and where they choose to go to school?
Well, I wouldn't maybe say collectively, but I do think kids, if they really, as quarterbacks, if they really truly want to make their way, it's finding a place where they can thrive. And I do think maybe that pool is becoming a little bit greater. You still see tons of kids, quarterbacks transfer because they probably pick their place based on where everybody thinks they should go as opposed to what fits them best. And that's something when we recruit our guys that we're really trying to instill in them is, hey, we think you can become your best here because you really fit what we're looking for. And if more kids thought that way and didn't think simply, I want to go to the best place or the best perceived place. But I do think more kids are understanding that they can thrive in all kinds of places. And if they thrive, ultimately the NFL is going to find them. I think it has spiked where more kids are coming out of obscure, places than ever before. And I think these two guys, Carson and Josh, certainly helped lay that groundwork a little bit.
I'm looking it up here, and you ended your thought just about 10 seconds too quickly. I also wanted to mention that Brent Vigen recruited Easton Stick to North Dakota State. So let's just take a quick look at – I'm trying to look at some histories here. Carson Wentz, the first quarterback drafted out of North Dakota State, and Josh Allen Easton Stick, right? I mean, why isn't he
drafted? Yeah, Easton
was drafted in the 5th round in 2019, so he should be on this list too. Josh Allen, the first quarterback out of Wyoming to be drafted. I'm looking to see if anybody's how many have even made it to the NFL. Okay, so the only other Wyoming player to throw a pass in the NFL was Jim Kick. And for a younger generation here watching, as you can see, I have a little Gale Sayers paying a little tribute. I'm going to start, alternating some things back there. But so I remember Jim Kick. Jim Kick was a running back who, he was back on those Dolphins teams with Larry Zonka and Mercury Morris. So he's the only guy to have thrown a pass in the NFL out of Wyoming prior to Josh Allen. So Brent, just to Matt's question, you're recruiting guys. You've recruited 3 NFL quarterbacks. as at North Dakota State, at Wyoming. I guess this is a chance for you to, to tout yourself here, but I guess when you go into a recruit's living room, you have a very unusual resume that you can show them to say, hey, come on with me. I've at least gone down this path a few times.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that play in it. I think in recruiting we kind of have a pretty good idea what we're looking for. The type of kid that can essentially come out of nowhere, so to speak, and climb to those heights. Now we haven't been perfect by any means, but to do that, you got to find a kid that's probably far from a finished product coming out of high school, but certainly coming out of his junior year of high school. So you're probably looking for something that's missing. And sometimes what's missing is, the kid played 3 sports. He just hasn't been this year-round quarterback. And that would be the case in both Josh and Carson's story. They were 3-sport kids. They weren't quarterback circuit kids. And I think we have a system, both what we ask the guys to do physically and then how they learn a system and apply principles in the protection game and the run game that not everybody might get. Certainly the concepts we throw in, all that's, relatable to NFL, but it's more how they learn the position, and what they're asked to do is along the lines of what NFL quarterbacks asked to do. So I think there's things along the way that they learn and pick up that prepare them. But I know this, that resume or whatever is only as good as the next guy's coming through. So, we have a couple of good young kids right now, and I hope that we can add their names to that, or one of their names to that story, whatever. But no, it's been fun, and to see those guys get to that next level is something else. That's for sure.
And to round out, I didn't want to leave North Dakota State. The only other player to throw an NFL pass from North Dakota State prior to Carson Wentz was defensive back Ernie Wheeler in the 1930s. So a little bit of a break in between North Dakota State NFL passers. All right, I got to ask you one more, and we'll let you go. And I apologize for keeping you long here. You got a season to play all of a sudden. What's with the fumbles between your 2 NFL quarterbacks? What happened with this instruction at North Dakota State with Carson Wentz and Josh Allen at Wyoming? Why did you never practice with a wet ball? What happened there?
I can't take credit or blame for that, I don't think. I don't know. You know what? I think in Josh's case, in Carson's probably what I've seen, it's probably just trying to hang on to plays too long more than it is their grasp of the football, maybe. I don't know. Josh's 2 fumbles in that first game, he probably got a little loose with, they're both on runs, obviously, as opposed to getting hit from a passing perspective. We work ball security like a running back would, so I don't know, maybe they're not doing that still. I don't know. But no, that's something they both would need to correct. That's a turnover is a turnover. The way
are you blaming sloppy NFL fundamentals?
I'm not saying anything. No, I don't know. It's something they both need to fix. So I know that much.
Hey, Brent, thanks for joining us. Have a great season in Laramie, one of my all-time favorite cities. I used to cover the WAC, the old WAC, when I was based in Vegas. I covered UNLV football. I had an occasion to go up to Laramie a handful of times, and what a great town. And I know it can't be easy to recruit there, but when you have a Josh Allen that has gone from Laramie to the NFL, I'm sure it makes it a little bit easier. And it was nice of you to join us.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. And I know there's a lot of people that follow the Bills out here in Wyoming. I think they've maybe supplanted the Broncos as the top team. So we're watching closely, and let's hope Josh keeps this run going.
All right, thanks so much for joining us, Brent.
Thank you.
And I'd like to welcome in an old friend of the Tim Graham Show, brought to you by CTBK. And that old friend is Joel Staniszewski, on the line from Vegas in a different way, though. Not just on the line. I guess we can't even say on the line anymore. There's no lines, really. It's all Wi-Fi.
Right. There's no phone. There's no phone lines.
Yeah, it's all coming through the airwaves. Joel Staniszewski, our friend from Vegas. He's from St. Joe's. He went to Buff State. And he's been out in Vegas for 15 years now as a handicapper, odds maker, industry analyst. And he's been coming on the Tim Graham Show for, I think this is year number 5, to talk about Bills
That sounds about right.
Betting perspective. Yeah, 2016 was the first year of the Tim Graham Show, back when it started off on as a Buffalo News production. And here we go. We just keep evolving through the formats. It's good to see you. If for those of you who are listening on podcast, you don't get to see Joel's beautiful face, but there he is for those of us looking at the Tim Graham Show YouTube channel. Joel, was that on your face before the pandemic? Ryan Fitzpatrick wishes he had the length that you have on that beard.
So back in, speaking of St. Joe's, back in my senior year at St. Joe's, I went to a date dance at Maryvale High School with a bunch of friends, and I decided to break dance during the dance, and I blasted my chin doing the dolphin, and there was just blood everywhere. And so I went and got it sewn up, and sometimes you get a lot of like fat tissue that collects in your scars, and my scar is just stupid looking. It's like this fatty chin scar. So for the past, I don't know when high school ended, 20 years, I've always had facial hair. And then within the past couple of years, I just let it grow because whatever. And during the pandemic, I think I've maybe shaved once. So you get a little extra Wolverine fur up top, and just letting it go.
It's impressive. It's got the great gray streaks going through it. There's a lot of character in there, a lot of nuance. And when we last saw each other, it's been a couple of years, but when we got together at Elmo's and had a few pops, I recall there was a beard, but not like that.
I don't think it was as advanced at that time.
Right. Do you braid it, or do you put it like, do the Lou Albano put it in the rubber band?
My daughter likes to put like ponytails in it so it sticks out and goes all crazy. But yeah, it's usually just hanging out like this, kind of messy and just whatever. The beauty of working from home, you just get to sit around in basketball shorts and a t-shirt and work whenever you want and take naps whenever you want.
Right on, man. I'm there. Working from home myself, as you can see. I mean, I'm coming to you from this basement here. This is not the 1270 The Fan Studios here, but I got a little renovation going. We're still in the soft launch phase of the Tim Graham Show, soft relaunch phase. We're going to be doing a whole rebranding thing and having a little bit more fun with this with Matthew Fairburn and Jonah Bronstein too. So Joel, let's get into this Bills game. It's only week 3. What do we know from a betting standpoint? What are we comfortable with as we continue to learn not only about the Bills, but really every team in the NFL? So you have to factor in this opponent that also had a, pandemic limited off season and no preseason games. And it still feels like we're very much in the learning phase, but Vegas doesn't stop posting spreads and totals just because we're learning. And maybe this provides an opportunity to take advantage. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Most sports books put up early lines months ago. So you could bet any of the weeks based upon any feeling you might have. And they've come down those pre-bets, but these numbers that are coming out are still kind of in the wait and see kind of category. You're dealing with teams that had extremely shortened training camps, no preseason, teams that had a really big turnover in players, in personnel, and coaches. So you're dealing with teams that don't have time to gel yet, whereas you look at the Bills, and we're pretty much the exact same team we were last year, with the addition of Diggs and some rookies. But for the most part, you're looking at the exact same team that we had, the exact same coaches. The personnel groupings has been pretty much the same, and I think that's helping to have the Bills be and perform as well as they have been so far.
So, Joel, we have 2.5 point spread. The Bills are favored, and a total of 47. And I know that you have an interesting thought on the money line here versus betting the Bills and laying the points. What are your thoughts on?
Yeah, so the Bills are you're in the most 2.5 around town, and you're going to be laying 110 to win 100 in any of the sports books. But if you just lay an extra 20 cents, $1.30, you're betting the Bills with no points. So the Bills so far this year, going into week 3, have been pretty undervalued when it comes to the money line. That 2.5 spread should be closer to minus $1.50. So you're getting that value without even having to lay the points. And with a Rams team that can score as quickly as we can, I think that 2.5 points is a lot to lay. The Bills had 2 opponents, weeks 1 and 2, that did score in garbage time. And if the Bills are up ahead, you might see that again. Or if it's a close game, again, you don't want to be hoping that they win and also hoping that they win by 3. So you lay that extra 20 cents on the Bills, and you don't have to worry about them winning by 3. All they have to do is win the game. And they've been undervalued weeks 1 and 2 when it comes to the money line, reflecting the point spread. And I would continue to bet that if you're liking the Bills this week.
On the line from Vegas, it is Joel Staniszewski from Sloan, St. Joe's and Buff State grad. Has been out in Vegas for a decade and a half as a odds maker, handicapper, analyst. Your thoughts on LA coming to the East Coast in back-to-back weeks? Now, they returned home to practice in Thousand Oaks, California, and they played Philadelphia. And then they go back to Southern California. Then they're going to come back to Orchard Park. What does that do for you as a handicapper when you're looking at this, when you're looking at all the numbers?
You definitely have to take travel into account. So in the course of a week, the LA Rams have traveled 7,500 miles and gone across 3 time zones 3 times now. So that's definitely going to put a wear and tear on them. Their body clock is going to be off a little bit. You know, you're playing at 10 o'clock versus 1 o'clock. It does not bode well for teams traveling west to east, traditionally speaking. And I know that there are different restrictions in place this year than previous years when it comes to how soon you're allowed to travel or what the traveling schedule will be. And there's testing that's going in place this year that obviously wasn't in place before. So there's a lot more red tape this year than previous years. And when you factor in the traveling and the time zones, I mean, I'm guessing that they have a direct flight, but it's still a 5-hour flight from California to Buffalo. So going 5 hours, that's 15 hours they've spent in an airplane and you're talking about guys that are 6'6", 300 pounds sitting on an airplane seat for 15 hours in the course of a week. That's a lot of travel time and a lot of wear and tear on your body. Not even taking into account practicing and playing games and getting beat up for 3-4 hours on a Sunday. So that definitely affects the Rams. I think hoping that the Bills can catch them maybe being a little tired at the start of the game, maybe wearing out at the end of the game, and can use that to their advantage.
The total is around 47, but it's been climbing. So I don't know. Can you get it at a little bit? You probably can get it a little bit higher, a little bit lower, depending on if you shop around. Your thoughts on this total? 47 points, two teams that, the Rams and Sean McVay, they have a reputation for scoring. The Bills, as a Bills fan, you can't just assume, right? But certainly through 2 weeks, it looks like a potent offense in which it's tough to cover everybody, and it's really the same for both teams.
Absolutely. The Bills have shown they can score 30 points quickly, and the Rams have done the same. The Rams, I believe, last year weren't as good as they were expected to be. I feel like this year they've kind of turned that around 2 weeks in and have proven they can run with the best of them. And as we know as Bills fans, there's been a couple of games here and there where we've given up really big plays really quickly. And think back to any year in any game and think about, the Raiders scoring however many 35 points on that game where Dante Whitner labeled somebody in the end zone about 10 seconds after they scored. They've been prone to getting beat over the top. I mean, this is a different Bills team, but you've seen Miami move the ball pretty well against us. Granted, some of that was in garbage time, and the same goes for the Jets. But when we're in that prevent defense, when we're up by 2 scores, you've seen the Bills give up a lot of yards and a lot of points. Now, if we're up 2 scores against the Rams and we give up some garbage time yards and points, I really won't care about that. But for an overs bet, that's definitely something to take into account, that we've definitely gotten soft on the back end when we're up 2 scores, when we know for the most part that we can recover an onside kick and secure a game. But for 2 games that we were definitely overpowering teams, it was definitely a lot closer on the scoreboard due to late scores. So it's something to definitely keep in mind when you're looking at totals. And yes, you can shop around and you can get a 46.5. And if I were betting a total on this game, as of right now, I would definitely say take the over.
And Joel, it's you mentioned there about garbage time touchdowns, and I wanted to ask you about this from a league-wide standpoint, because I think this impacts garbage time in a very specific way. No crowds at most of these games, and when you do have crowds, they're so limited, and then the decibel level with the fake crowd noise too. So you have these quarterbacks that are able to work their offense without being, having the crowd on top of them, having, that heaviness that you get when you're on the road. Maybe it impacts the home team too, but how does the crowd impact the point spread? Having no crowd, because traditionally it's 2.5, 3 points or whatever to the home team. But I know we've discussed in the past that there are only a handful of stadiums where that really holds true from a crowd noise standpoint. Minnesota, New Orleans, Kansas City, Seattle, probably Orchard Park to an extent. But anyway, what's your take on, can you finding a little extra value because the odds makers are still maybe given the 2.5 where maybe it should only be 1.5 or 2 now?
Yeah, crowd noise is definitely a big thing. I believe that the maximum they can pump in is like 70 decibels. And I know that whoever holds the current record, it might be the Chiefs at like 136 decibels or something crazy like that. You can definitely notice the difference. And I know that they pump in extra noise for the fans at home. And I'm guessing that's probably to try to cut out some of the cursing and extra stuff that's going on the field when you're watching NFL or NHL playoffs. When the sound gets reversed, it's like that they're dropping some F-bombs and they need to do something quick. So it's definitely going to affect teams when a big component of your team is your stadium, is the noise, is the screaming, is the maniacs just going crazy. It definitely affects offenses those fast-paced, no-huddle offenses, the shotgun and pistol formations where you don't have to do the leg raise. You're seeing a lot more teams getting caught with offside penalties because of the hard counts, and that gives the offense a free play to chuck it downfield. So I definitely think that's something that you can't really think about when you're putting up a line, but from a betting standpoint, when you're thinking about this collection of things, for example, the Rams with the travel, and you're dealing with shortened training camps, no preseason with teams with a big turnover of players, you're talking about no extra noise on the defensive side of the ball. On those 3rd and shorts, 4th and 1s where the crowds are going crazy, or after the team scores, you're not getting that extra noise where you see the quarterback, covering his helmet to listen to the play call and people just going crazy in the crowd. You're not seeing that, and they're not hearing it. And definitely something that can affect the defense negatively, because the offense is not having to call a timeout because they couldn't get the play in, or huddling up when they want to do a no huddle. So it definitely can affect defenses. It can definitely affect totals because teams are being able to run more plays. I think the Bills might be leading the league in plays per game. And a lot of that is they can just get up and go. I mean, as a Bills fan, I watch definitely the Bills the most. And I remember seeing games where it's like 8 minutes into the game and we're calling timeout because we can't get the play in and we can't, get to the line on time. And we're not seeing that as much. So it's definitely moving the pace of the game faster. It's getting the offense while they have that momentum, they just keep on moving, and the defense is just sitting there catching their breath, and they don't even have time to change out personnel groupings. And it definitely has affected teams for sure.
Now, you had an interesting thought we were discussing earlier with the Bills to the start that they're off to, the impression that they've made. The impression that they've made on odds makers, and the schedule that's upcoming. And regarding those first handful of games, you had pointed out that the Bills could be favored through 5 games, which is something we haven't seen.
Yeah, definitely a interesting thing. The Bills, as of those first 5 games, 3 of them are on the road, or were, because of the Dolphins game. And point spreads can change dramatically depending upon wins and losses, injuries. If any player starts to test positive, I mean, we're going to see a big move on some of these games. But we could definitely – the Bills are favored this week. They were favored the first 2 weeks. Coming to Las Vegas the next week, they could be – the look-ahead line is the Bills -2. Tennessee, they could be a small favorite. Up until we host the Kansas City Chiefs in mid-October. So the first 5 weeks of an NFL season where the Bills are going to possibly be favored is got to be something that we haven't seen in 25 years. And so it's a pretty interesting thing to note that the Bills are, as much as we always say, this is the year. I mean, the Bills are definitely looking 2 weeks into the season like they can definitely be the team this year to go further than they have in the past.
I'm trying to find it here. I was furiously trying to put all the different criteria into Pro Football Reference, and I think I have the answer just as you were winding down there. 1991. The last time the Bills were favored through 5 weeks in a season. So they've been at 4 a couple of times. They were at 4 in 92, 93, 99, 2003, 2005, in which that's within the 5-game span, not 4 in a row. But to get through week 5 and haven't been favored, we have to go back to the second Super Bowl season. So that's impressive.
If you go back not that far, 5-6 years, I would venture to guess that there's been entire seasons where the Bills weren't favored for 5 games. So we're talking about the first 5 games with another game against the Jets, another game against the Dolphins, a home game against New England possibly, the Chargers, the Denver Broncos. I mean, we could definitely see the Bills favored 10 times this year, which is crazy to think.
I'm trying to find that also. Okay, so they were favored 7 times last year, 7 times in 2017. Okay, this actually happens quite a bit. But how about this? 2018, they were favored 3 times the whole year. 2013, they were favored twice the entire season. 2010, twice. 2009, 4 times. 2007, twice. So you're 2001 once. So yeah, you're
It was a rough
dead on.
year.
I mean, you just took a guess, and you're right. There have been a lot of seasons in which they haven't even come close to having 5 times where they were favored.
Yeah, we're definitely in a interesting time for the Bills.
Well, a lot of people don't know how the sausage is made. I'll go ahead and make a confession. This is the second time Joel and I have done this segment because I screwed up the first one. But this one was much better.
I wasn't going to say anything.
More. It was we had a stat aspect to it. We looked some things up. We confirmed some of your theories to be factual. We much smoother. I didn't screw up whether or not the Bills were favored or not in trying to figure out about the money line and whether or not you want to lay the points. I had a little trouble with that. So to summarize, Joel Staniszewski, but I can't get your name right. Joel Staniszewski thinks you should take the Bills on the money line. Take the over for now, unless it continues to. When do you start getting concerned about the total?
Another point. When it
Yeah,
gets like
49 or so, 48.
If it gets up to like 48.5, I would definitely be concerned. I'm also a really big fan of laying the money line because you have the ability to try to hedge a little bit. I bet the Bills versus the Jets on the money line. And then after halftime or right before halftime, I bet the Jets plus 21.5. So you have the ability to get a really good middle on some of these games. When you're betting in running, when you're looking at 2 really high-powered and fast-scoring teams like the Rams and the Bills can be, you can bet both sides of a game all day long and hope to really cash out on games like that.
Joel Staniszewski on the line from Vegas. I love saying those words because that means it's football season. And for the 5th year in a row, Joel Staniszewski coming on the show to give you his thoughts on the Buffalo Bills from a betting standpoint. Joel, thanks for joining us again. I look forward to, 14 more of these. Maybe more.
All right, sounds good.
Maybe
Definitely more. Way
right,
more. All right, take care.
Thanks for the time.
All right, have a good one.
All right, boys, so there you have it. Joel Staniszewski says take the Bills on the money line. Go ahead and bet the over for now. The number keeps climbing, but he's comfortable with the over for now, given what he's seen from these two teams through the first 2 weeks. The greatest 45 of all time. Bob Gibson was the best I could come up with. What else is out there?
Pedro Martinez is decent. He's not Bob Gibson though. I'd say
Pedro did have especially when you factor in the eras and how much better hitters were, he did have a Bob Gibson-esque season, one of his Cy Young years. So
yeah, he was up there.
Kenny Easley's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Jonah, you had one.
Well, Donovan Mitchell, an excellent current player, maybe not on Bob Gibson's level, but maybe the best active 45.
And Uncle Spliffy, the late Cliff.
You know what? I think that was the other Cliff Robinson.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Again, awarded in 1980.
See, the Buffalo's Cliff Robinson played on so many different teams. When you said Cliff, I was like, all right, yeah, he probably.
Well, I did it first too, and then I clicked it, and then
he's probably worn a ton of different jerseys.
He was back at school, public school 45 in Buffalo, I think, in 1980.
Well, you know, like Cliff Robinson only wore 2 different numbers, 3 and 30, even though he played for 73 teams. All right, any closing thoughts, fellas? Jonah, how about this? NBA, I don't think ESPN likes the idea of a potential Miami-Denver final not that we're going to get that, but Miami, surprising. Denver has been a live dog, I think, so far against the Lakers. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, both series are 3-1. I think it's going to be Miami against the Lakers, and that's an interesting storyline. LeBron against the Heat, against Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra, and the team he left. Much was made about him leaving Cleveland the first time, but he also left Miami with some antagonistic feelings towards that organization, or that organization had maybe toward the way he left, and that'll be an interesting storyline. And the Lakers seem to be rolling. This could be their third straight playoff series win. That would be a 5-game series victory if they close it out in Game 5. But I think that the Heat match up pretty well, and the Lakers would probably be the favorite, but it could be a more competitive series than we've seen through the Lakers' trip through the Western Conference.
You know, you raise a good point there about LeBron and the Heat, which, you know, I knew obviously, but I'm thinking when I said what I did about ESPN's matchup, you had to like the sexiness of Lakers Celtics in the final. You know, the market size is obviously the tradition, the history of that rivalry, and all the different threads that you can pull on from a television production standpoint. But yeah, it's not a bad consolation prize to do, you know, to have LeBron going up against the Heat.
I think the NBA would really like to see LeBron in those finals. A lot of the other stars and star tandems have been eliminated early or didn't make it to the playoffs, to the bubble. And whether it's the Celtics or the Heat on the other side, I think for the television networks, our friend Scooter Vertino would probably like to see LeBron playing a few more games.
Well, before we wrap up, I want to give our friends from Shampoo Travis, Bissau, and Kirshner one more nod, and to urge you that if you have any assurance, accounting, tax, litigation support, you need any advice on acquisitions and mergers, call our friends at CTBK. They are an accounting firm with a growing team of accountants and business consultants, and they're available and ready to solve any issue your business faces. For a consultation or to request a quote, call 716-630-2400. Again, that's 716-630-2400. Shampoo Travis, Bissau, and Kirshner, over a quarter century of proven accounting and business excellence for Western New York and beyond. Thanks to CTBK. Thanks to Jonah Bronstein and Matthew Fairburn for getting us through this video component here, this new thing that we're doing. This soft relaunch continues, but we'll be rounding into full force. You know, Category 1, Tim McCain. That was really cheesy.
Semi-hard relaunch.
Yeah.
I do like the upgrades to Graham Central Station.
Well, I'm going to try to just work some things through. People don't need to see what's going on behind those, the art there, but yeah, you know, Ali over Liston, the classic photo there, and Gale Sayers, rest in peace. We lost him this week. So I put Gale Sayers there just as a little veneer as we continue the, as Jonas said, the semi-hard relaunch. We'll see you next week. Thanks again. As I should wrap up, every host should thanking his guests, Brent Vigen from Wyoming, the offensive coordinator of Josh Allen with the Cowboys, and also Joel Staniszewski on the line from Vegas. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.